Carolyn's Story by Johanna Kuyper. The glorious sunshine filled the living room, making the shadows dance in fright of being whisked away into nothingness. The warmth radiated off the floor, making the tiny apartment feel like summer was around the corner, and indeed it was. 2 more weeks of my second year in college, and the summer would be here. Just the thought of it made me weak in the knees. The beach, the lemonade, the summer love, and the flip-flops. I smiled with anticipation of what this summer had in store. Suddenly I felt as though I needed to be in the sun, gathering in the warmth until summer arrived. I kneeled on the couch and reached to open the window. I scanned the busy world from my second-story apartment in San Diego. Down the bush-covered hill from where the apartment building stood was the ever-busy Genesee Avenue. The land beyond the houses reflected beauty with its hills, houses, and trees. A breeze swept through the window and rustled the papers on my desk. The wind caught them up so easily, making them float in a zigzag motion toward the floor. The sun beamed onto the papers, like a spotlight on an actress singing a solo. Bending down, I scooped up the papers and placed them in a pile back where they belonged. The words on the page caught my attention. It was part of my book that I had been writing over the past 2 months or so. "How did you get out of your folder?" I whispered. I searched the rest of my desk, which took hard work. My chipped, white-painted wooden desk was covered in post-its, pens, papers, and other necessary doodads. Feeling inspired to fix it up, I got to work cleaning up the space that would help me move up in life. I was an author. Well, almost. I dreamed of becoming one. I had always loved the idea of jumping into a new world, doing anything that I wanted to do with the characters. I was the master of the universe. I mean, couldn't be that hard to write words on a paper, go to a publisher, and let them do most of the work. It seemed oh so simple to me that I wondered why everyone wasn't an author. I stepped back and looked at my now organized desk. I smiled, for I was on the road to success. The aroma of coffee filled the air as I stepped into the Starbucks. It was close and convenient because it was only a short-mile bike ride from my apartment. After getting my iced coffee, I grabbed a table by the window. Starbucks was the perfect place to relax. I could have coffee, food, and a quiet place to work on my book. The sun danced over my arms as I rushed to fill the pages with a creative story. I loved the sun. In college we had learned about how vitamin D helped brain function, so I figured it wouldn't hurt when I needed an idea. But I had an idea already. It captured the life of a girl who had recently broken up with her first love. In some ways it reminded me of Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez. After their breakup, Justin became reckless and harsh-toned. Selena said she wasn't ready for a new relationship. The hurt was still too real and close at hand. I wanted to show how much love hurts. It'll be a top seller. I continued to type my story, filling my body with coffee to stimulate my mind. I was so close to the end. The end was wrapping up, tying the story together like a giant bow on a present. A satisfying sigh escaped my lips, the breath moving my straight brown bangs from my face. I had finished the book. It was beautiful and I loved it. Now all I needed was a publisher. Seeing that I still had 3 hours until closing, I brought up the internet. The front-page news article was about the GOP and Obama's rating going below 50%. "Oh, how dreadful," I remarked sarcastically. Shaking my head, I turned at the sound of someone calling to me. "What?" I repeated behind me. A college-aged man who appeared to be waiting for his coffee was staring at me. He smiled and repeated, "Was your story that bad?" I laughed. He must have been watching over my shoulder as I wrote my story. "How'd you know I was writing a story?" nodding my chin in his direction. Grabbing his drink when the barista held it out to him, he walked toward me with a slight swagger. Helping himself to the other chair at my table, his eyes met mine. I was immediately swept into the blue ocean of his eyes as though a gentle breeze pushed me forward. Reluctantly pulling myself together, I repeated my question. His answer surprised me. He told me that I had a quick hand and a deep concentration, that I could only be a writer. In my mind I said, "Oh yeah, I have a deep concentration while looking in your eyes." An awkward silence came over us. Reaching out to him, I said, "I'm Carolyn." His hand gripped mine in a firm handshake. "I'm Kevin. Nice to meet you." I nodded in agreement. My mind raced, trying to come up with more questions. But his mind was quicker. "Are you almost done with your book?" "Yes. Actually, I just finished. All I need now is to find a publisher." "But how hard could that be?" His look became skeptical, but changed into the face of a mischievous boy. Not knowing what to expect, I started to pack up my things. I grabbed my shoulder bag and started to stand up when a piece of paper was shoved into my hand. A number and email were scrawled in messy blue ink. I gave him a look that he read as "Really?" for his face turned red. "Flip it over," Kevin mumbled. "It's the name of a publisher that I heard was good. I thought you might want to check it out for your book." I had never heard of it before, and I had done my research. But, to be polite, I thanked him and left on my sun-warmed bike. Weeks later, I pulled several envelopes from my mailbox. I dreaded opening them. They were mostly from the publishers that I had submitted my book to. It seemed like none of them had liked my story. They commented on how it was good, just not right for the company. In one of the letters, the publisher commented on how the story had already been written. I sighed. Maybe I should have become a public speaker, as some people had pointed out I should be. As I walked with a sad aura floating around me, I spotted a newspaper lying on the floor. Picking it up, I saw a picture of Pope Francis. Intrigued, I skimmed the article. It talked about the success of his first sermon. He seemed to be mighty good with words. Maybe I should learn from him. A thought came to my mind, stopping me in my tracks. I should be enjoying my summer, not standing around reading rejection letters. Turning on my heel, I walked right back out the door and all the way to the Starbucks. By the time I got to the store, I was desperate for a nice iced coffee. Walking in, I was bathed in the heavenly smell of coffee. Breathing it in, I walked right up to the counter, ready to order. Sighing heavily as I sipped the addicting drink, I looked around the place, scouting out a table for one. But I spotted something that made me glad for a table for two. Sliding into the open chair, I smiled. "Hello, Kevin." Looking up from the book he was reading, he returned the smile. "Hello, Carolyn." We had exchanged messages through texts and emails over the course of the past 3 weeks. We had come to know each other better and found that we were compatible as friends. Once we even had a casual dinner in the Five Guys near the Starbucks we had met at. He and I had had a wonderful time. Today was no exception to that. We laughed and talked as though we had known each other forever. I liked Kevin. He was a nice guy with great eyes. He made me laugh and feel confident about who I was. He was the sunshine in my gloomy world. "So what book were you reading?" I asked, trying to keep our conversation going. "Oh, it's a new book that I found recently. I actually know the author." "Really? That's so cool! Is it any good?" I was always anxious to read a good book. "I think it's great. Marvelously written, if I do say so myself." The grin on his face showed me he was holding something back. It was too mischievous. Playing along, hoping to find out the secret. "What is it about?" He smiled, his blue eyes radiating delight. "You'll have to read it to find out for yourself." A laugh filled the air when I glared playfully at him. Pushing into a new conversation, he asked me about my luck finding a publisher. My face sagged with sadness. "It's not going too well. None of the publishers seem to be at all interested in making a deal with me. I mean, I thought it was such a good book. Didn't you think so?" Earlier, when Kevin and I had first talked after our meeting, he had asked me to send a copy of my story to him, since he loved reading. Placing his hand over mine, he told me in a sweet, convincing voice, "I thought it was marvelously written." I smiled, thanking him for his words of encouragement. Wanting to change the subject, I tried once again to reel the suspicious secret out of him. "So, what's the big secret?" He innocently looked at me as if to say, "What secret?" I slapped his hand playfully. "You know it's secret. You have had an impish grin on your face all day." He chuckled, admiring my enthusiasm. "If I give you the book, will you stop pestering me with your silly questions?" Pretending to ponder hard and deep about this question, I complied with his agreement. I put out my hand, gesturing for him to pay up. The mischievous grin returned to his face as he placed the book in my hand. I stared at him strangely as I brought the reward closer to me. My heart began to beat wildly. My breath became short. "My book!" I screamed. "Oh, my goodness!" I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was real. I felt like I was on top of the world. I stared at the cover. "Slippery Paths," it read, just as I had pictured it in my mind. I opened it and flipped through the pages. Something caught my eye on the first page. A handwritten note, written in messy blue ink, read, "Dear Caroline, you have worked so hard, and I admire you for your dedication and perseverance. I hope this is a satisfying reward for all you have invested into it. The day after you sent it to me, I had submitted it to my father's publishing company. He immediately loved it, and so will everyone else. Yours truly, Kevin." This concludes the reading of Caroline's Story by Johanna Kuyper.